Hello, everyone. Well, I hope you're doing well. Earlier this week, Democrats took a victory lap by declaring that rampant inflation had ended. Now, they cited a monthly report that basically showed that overall inflation didn't increase any during the month of July. While this makes for a good soundbite in the mainstream media, the truth of high prices is still evident at the grocery store, fuel pump, and just about everywhere. In reality, prices did continue to climb in July, especially on necessities such as food. But the price of gasoline, it did drop a little, which offset the overall inflation rate of other products. Unfortunately, analysts agree that the small drop in fuel prices is only temporary and will likely start climbing again soon. This slight pause in our out-of-control inflation would be a great time to address the underlying issues that have caused inflation and the impacts on our economy. However, this week Democrats once again proved they have no interest in fixing the problems that Americans are actually facing. Now, the first step to resolving any problem is actually to admit you have a problem. But as hardworking Americans struggle to put gas in their cars and food on their tables, Washington Democrats have not only ignored these problems, they are now doubling down on the policies that initially created the problems. And this week, they rammed through the Senate and the House a bill which independent analysts have acknowledged will accelerate inflation, increase the cost for goods, and raise taxes. When our inflation started to get out of control, the chairman of the Federal Reserve appeared before a House Financial Services Committee, and I pressed him to identify the underlying causes of our current inflation. And he reluctantly admitted that the massive amounts of wasteful spending by Congress was a significant factor. Now, while spending trillions of your taxpayer dollars kickstarted inflation, it was other bad policies from Congress and the White House that accelerated the rise in prices. Policies such as increasing regulations, which always adds cost to businesses' employers, especially those policies that increase the cost in the energy industry, really contributed to our out-of-control price hikes. Now, instead of addressing these issues, Washington Democrats decided to ram through Congress this $740 billion spending bill that, by the way, also raises our taxes. Ironically, the bill includes a tax increase on domestic oil producers, and it also imposes stiff tariffs on imported oil. These new taxes will certainly wipe out any of the temporary cost reductions that the Democrats are currently celebrating. Also, the bill spends $400 billion on Green New Deal provisions, $248 billion to prop up Obamacare, but it also increases taxes on seniors' retirements, small businesses, and our largest employers. Now, everyone who understands basic economics knows that all increases in cost eventually trickle down to the employee and the consumer. Therefore, this bill will ultimately result on a reduction in pay increases, employment opportunities, and cause higher costs. You may remember several years ago when the Obama and Biden administration was caught using the IRS as a weapon against conservative organizations and certain conservative individuals. Well, not only does this bill allow the Biden administration to open that door again, Nancy Pelosi and congressional Democrats are assisting because this bill includes adding 87,000 more IRS agents. Yes, 87,000 more IRS agents on top of what they already have. With the past experience we have at the White House abusing the power of the IRS and the recent instances of the FBI being used to attack political opponents, I can only imagine what strong-arm tactics of having over 120,000 IRS agents targeting citizens will be like. This in itself is enough reason for anyone to oppose this legislation. However, the Democrats have totally sold out to the idea of creating a strong central government with the authority and the ability to strong-arm American citizens. When this bill was voted on in the Senate, Democrats who had voted against adding 20,000 new Border Patrol agents eagerly voted to add the 87,000 new IRS agents. But they also voted against a Republican amendment that would have protected anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year from these tax hikes. And when the bill came before the House, Democrats united to block a Republican amendment that would have stripped out the hiring of the new IRS agents. Although Republicans unified and tried every tactic available to try to stop this legislation, Democrats were finally able to pass it through the chamber, and it's now headed to President Biden for his signature. You know, it's almost like the Democrats here in Washington are doing everything they can to make life more difficult, more expensive, and products harder to find. Another major issue that we all experienced in the last week was the unprecedented raid by the FBI on Donald Trump's private home in Florida. This is unbelievable that the federal government is using law enforcement as a weapon against political enemies. I think this is just more evidence of how the Democrats have been weaponizing government agencies to target and harass anyone who stands in their way of implementing socialism in our country. Now, either the FBI is lying to us about what they were looking for, or this is a massive abuse of power. Now, supposedly, President Trump was still in possession of some documents that really should have been turned over to the National Archives for preservation. And it was those documents the FBI was looking for. However, documents that should be placed in a vault in a museum for historical keeping doesn't really rise to the level of sending 30 federal agents to raid someone's home. So either they're lying to us about it, or there was another objective, such as just to grab whatever documents that they could get to see if there was anything that could be used by the January 6th committee. Now, that's just my opinion, but seeing how things have been operating here in Washington, D.C., well, I believe that is not beyond any consideration. You know, there has always been a level of corruption in government, but what we're witnessing today is even greater than anything we have seen in history. No wonder a historic number of Americans distrust their federal government. Since I've been in Congress, I've been focusing much of my efforts on weeding out the corruption within these out-of-control agencies and ultimately reforming our federal government. Now, during Trump's presidency, we made some progress in that arena, but we found out that current laws, they protect people from being removed from positions in the federal government, and it insulates them from any disciplinary action. Now, as a result of this, I introduced a bill called the Merit Act, which would reform the employment code and allow us to actually remove bad employees from the federal government. Passing the Merit Act is imperative for us to be able to weed out the corruption from our federal government, and it will continue to be one of my top priorities, especially when Republicans take control of Congress next January. Americans expect and deserve a government that's small in size, limited in scope, and is fully accountable to the American people. I believe we can get there, but it's going to take all of us working together. And we can achieve a nation that is free, safe, and full of opportunity. God bless you. May God bless America.